Vehicles are OP and too hard to take down. That's something we hear all the time, and I believe there are a few good reasons behind this. And it's not always, in fact, that the vehicle itself is too powerful, but sometimes that the vehicles available to each team and the map layout are flawed. So in this video, I want to delve a little further into these issues that have plagued Battlefield 4 and other games in the hope that for Battlefield 6, these issues will be less of a problem. Before we jump in, be sure to pop by our live stream sometime over at twitch.tv/ghostgaminggg. I stream a few times a week and I always love chatting to you guys and playing a few rounds of BF4 with you. I don't really go by a set schedule, but you can always find the times for any given week in the Discord. And you guys coming by and watching is honestly one of the best ways that you can support the channel, so thank you. So when it comes to vehicles in Battlefield, you have to balance them on three different fronts. Firstly, they have to be balanced against infantry. The infantry have to be in with a chance of taking down a vehicle, like with a well-timed SMAW or a well-aimed SRAW on a jet, for example. But at the same time, any old player can pick up a Stinger or an Igla to lock onto an air vehicle, which will act more as a deterrent than an actual means of destroying the aircraft. And I think that's one reason that many players feel helpless against good vehicle users. It's because they view weapons like Stingers and Iglas as gadgets that will net them kills, when in actuality they very rarely get you a kill, but they may help you contribute towards the destroying of an aircraft by making the pilot use up their ECM, or by causing a mobility hit on them whilst they're dogfighting your team's jet. Now, the second way the vehicles need to be balanced is vehicle type versus vehicle type. So this sort of gameplay in Battlefield has always been referred to as rock, paper, scissors. Everybody knows, the stealth jet is the big daddy of the skies. It will shred any jet or helicopter it gets close to with its 20mm cannons. But it's fairly bad at taking out armoured ground targets. Then you have the AA, which is the hard counter to the stealth jets and the helis. It'll shred any air vehicle, but its weak point is that it can't really go one-on-one with an enemy tank or IFV. And then tanks can easily destroy enemy armor and infantry, but are fairly useless against air vehicles like the attack jet. You get the point. And thirdly, there are the smaller advantages that a lot of the US vehicles, for example, have over other vehicles in the same class, like for example the US Viper attack helicopter being much better than the Russian Havoc or the Chinese Z-10. I actually did an in-depth video on that not so long ago, so if you want to check that out, click the eye thingy up there in the corner. But this vehicle gameplay, or meta, is what a lot of the big vehicle maps in Battlefield are built upon. So as soon as you begin to remove some of those vehicles from the meta, or indeed add vehicles for one team, as is the case on some certain capturable flags, it can cause big balance problems and lead to a lot of landslide victories for one team and complaints from the infantry due to vehicle farming. So I wanted to highlight a few of the Battlefield 4 maps that in my eyes are some of the most problematic, and then outline what those problems are so that hopefully history won't repeat itself. Now, if you're interested in knowing all the details, I'm going to link down below the resource where I found many of these statistics. Shout out to Mr. Darth Vader for pointing me in the direction of this fantastic resource. Over on Reddit, there is a guy by the name of Machimib who created a map imbalance chart, and that shows 20,000 battle reports from a bunch of different maps, and it has the win rates for each of the teams. And as you'll see from this chart, a lot of the maps are severely unbalanced. And as we go through some of them, you might just be able to relate. So let's start off with one of the biggest offenders that comes to mind, and that is Siege of Shanghai. This is largely due to the map design and vehicle selection. The only air vehicle on this map are the attack helicopters, one on either team, and therefore the only vehicle that can really dispatch the other. So what you often end up with is two amazing pilots in one attack helicopter that ultimately dominate the enemy heli, and then just wreak havoc on the infantry and armour unchallenged. There's no AA tank to pester them, and no jets that can expose the heli's weakness by attacking it from above. On top of that, there are a bunch of buildings all over the place where the heli can easily line of sight lock-ons from the infantry, Now add to that the fact that the American Viper is vastly superior to the Chinese Z-10, and you can easily end up with a one-sided match. Ultimately, whoever controls the attack helicopters controls the match. Moving on, we have Lancang Dam. So here you do have plenty of vehicles available to each team, but the AA tank becomes far too powerful here, being able to shoot every single air vehicle on the map wherever they may be, simply due to the U-shaped design of the map itself and the incredible range of the AA's 20mm guns. Next up we have Gulf of Oman, which is probably the most unbalanced map in Battlefield 4, with the Russian team having a 70% win rate. So here the Russian side start off with an IFE and a main battle tank. They then acquire a further 2 IFEs and a second tank by capturing the E, F and G flags, giving them a total of 3 IFEs and 2 tanks. Now since the US team are spawning from an aircraft carrier, they don't start off with any armour. Instead, they get a couple of attack boats, but those are honestly close to useless because of the steep slope up to the beach and a lack of flanking routes. Now the US team do get some armour. They can get 2 IFEs and 1 tank by capturing the A, B and D flags. So what you basically have is 5 pieces of armour for the Russian team versus 3 for the US, which means they get absolutely stomped on. It's also way easier for Russia to capture their flags and get that armour fast because they spawn so much closer to their home flags. In addition, the Russian Havoc attack helicopter, whilst worse than the American Viper, has a large building to hide behind and LOS lock-ons, tow missiles, TV missiles, you name it, and it's pretty easy for them to simply retreat to their deployment and make use of their base AA. The Americans have no such luck. They've got no cover on that large open beach and no deployment in range. Then we have 2 stealth jets on this map that are close to useless against the armour on the ground, and once the sandstorm kicks in, you're basically wasting your time being in these vehicles at all. Okay, the next problem child is Altai Range. On this map, each team gets not 1 but 2 AA tanks, 1 at their deployment as usual and 1 at their home flag. Now the AA tank is already incredibly powerful as it is, and its main threat is the enemy attack jet, and guess what? There aren't any. There are only 2 stealth jets per team, 1 attack heli and then a second attack heli that spawns at a central flag for whichever team captures that. So as you can imagine, without an attack jet on your team, flying an attack heli or stealth jet on this map is basically a waste of time with 2 AA tanks constantly going for you. Now I'll also go ahead and quickly mention Dragon Pass here, since this map suffers from the exact same symptoms as Altai Range, 4 AA tanks and no attack jets. Now I'll give a special mention to Dawnbreaker here. I think that the heli versus single AA tank meta on this map is fairly balanced. The helis have plenty of places to hide, as do the infantry. There are also lots of rooftops for the infantry to scale and pester the helis with their lock-on weaponry. But the only thing I've never understood on this map is having 2 stealth jets. They just honestly make no sense at all on this map, given the amount of obstructions. They do prove as a formidable force to keep the enemy attack heli in check and, stop things turning into Siege of Shanghai, but as a stealth jet pilot, simply spending the entire round babysitting the enemy attack heli is not exactly a fun experience. Okay, next up we have Rogue Transmission, where the Russian team win 76.6% of the time. Honestly, the flag layout here is bananas. The Russians get given a flag right next to their deployment, which is even covered by their base AA, while the Chinese team's home flag is miles away and very close to the other flags. The Chinese home flag is essentially the equivalent of Russia's B flag, the only difference being the Russian B flag is a construction site and very open, and therefore very easy for their team's armour and aircraft to cover that flag and stop enemy infantry from taking it, while the E flag over at the Chinese side is a hotspot for infantry combat with, lots of buildings they can hide in, which means it switches hands all the time, and the vehicle users can't effectively wipe it clean of infantry and stop them from recapping. Moving on, we have Caspian Border with a 61.1% 66.8% win rate for the US team. This one really comes down to the wall that splits the battlefield in half. The US team simply have too easy a time defending the A and B flags because they're so well defended behind the wall. And, from there they only have to capture either C or D to get a ticket bleed on the enemy. And obviously, it's a very short redeploy distance from B to get to C or D. Now meanwhile, the Russian team, they have to hold E, C and D for the whole match. As soon as they lose one of those, they'll lose their advantage. You've also, once again, got the superior US Viper attack helicopter going up against the much worse Russian Havoc. And similarly, the US stealth jets, the F-35s, wiping the ground with the worse Russian Su-50s. Now, I could go on and on about other maps, but this would be a really long video, so without going too in depth, I think the spacing of the flags on Giants of Karelia is vastly in favour of the US team, resulting in a 65.6% win rate for them there. I've never really understood why you need an AA tank on Zavod to deal with nothing more than a single scout helicopter, yet you don't need an AA tank on Siege to deal with an attack helicopter. That logic just makes no sense to me. So as you can see, Battlefield 4 maps are far from being perfect, despite the fact that the game is regarded as one of the better Battlefield titles. And I really hope DICE are well aware of these issues when they're planning the vehicle spawns and flag layouts for the next game. Vehicle spawning on flags, has always been a point of contention. On the one hand, they make certain flags a higher priority to capture for both teams because of the extra vehicle you get from them. But on the other hand, they can make rounds very one-sided, and they really encourage spawn camping as well. Take the single attack helicopter spawn you get on the D flag on Rogue Transmission, for example. The main challenge on that map isn't capping the flag, it's simply being able to take off in the helicopter before you get RPG'd. In any case, I do have faith that DICE are strongly looking at Battlefield 4 for inspiration, since, this was their last great modern Battlefield game, and that they have learnt from both the good and the bad. But what do you guys think about this? I know there are a lot of vehicle users here, as well as infantry players, and everything I've said in this video is of course only my opinion. You of course may agree or disagree, so feel free to chime in with your own thoughts and comments down below, and I'll look forward to reading those. Thank you for watching the video as always guys, and for your continued support. Have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.